Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In Los Angeles, at the center of the dazzling American fashion empire built by the Forrester family, chaos is brewing beneath the shimmering surface, because Hope Logan, usually calm, professional and poised, is walking into the Forrester Creations executive design suite with a nervous tremor in her chest after receiving news that she will be working alone with Thomas Forrester all week, without any other designers, assistants or team members present, and the idea hits her like thunder because she knows what this implies not just for her career, but for her complicated heart, her lingering romantic tension with Thomas, and the shadow that Liam Spencer still casts over her decisions, especially now that jealousy, fear, memory, passion, trust, and panic are mixing into an emotional cocktail she didn't know she could still feel. And everything becomes even more unpredictable when Rich Forrester unexpectedly approves this new plan, announcing that Hope and Thomas have to isolate in a private design space upstairs to finish the most important fashion line of the year. And the lockable office door suddenly feels like a prison barrier closing Hope into an emotional chamber she never asked for, because she knows Thomas still loves her deeply, obsessively, protectively, passionately, and although she claims she has control over her feelings, her pulse says otherwise as she pushes her blonde hair behind her ear and walks toward the same man who once turned her life upside down. Thomas stands ready at his sketch desk, perfectly groomed, handsome, his artistic eyes focused on their designs, pretending to be professionally calm but barely containing the excitement that Hope will be with him alone for days, without interruptions, without their co-workers, without the world breaking the magnetic pull between them, and he tells himself this time he will be different. He will be normal, stable, safe, patient, yet behind his self-control sits a fierce territorial flame waiting to burn because deep inside, the old version of Thomas, the one who once manipulated, obsessed, dreamed, fantasized, and clung to Hope with terrifying intensity, still exists even if he promises everyone, including himself, that he is healed. Hope walks in and tries to keep her voice steady as she lays out their first sketch revisions, and tells Thomas they must stay focused, because if they fail, if they collapse, if they give in to emotion, the entire hope for the future line could implode. But as she talks, her fingers brush his hand by accident and electricity shoots through her like lightning, and in the stillness she becomes aware of how dangerously close they truly are and how Ridge's plan to pair them alone could affect everything, especially Liam, who has been watching from a distance, convinced that Hope and Thomas working together is a disaster waiting to erupt, and today, Liam is pacing at home furious, jealous, anxious, and scared, calling Steffi to complain that Hope is being manipulated all over again, convinced Thomas still has dark intentions, ignoring Steffi's attempts to calm him because she believes Thomas has changed, but Liam refuses to accept it, pacing like a trapped wolf across the living room floor while his thoughts spin through memories of Hope's betrayal when she kissed Thomas before, remembering the heartbreak, the humiliation, the destruction of their marriage, and all the forgiveness he tried to give her, only to watch Hope return to Thomas's orbit again, and Liam knows something bad will happen, something explosive, something irreversible, because Hope and Thomas have chemistry that's too powerful to control. Meanwhile, Brooke Logan bursts into Ridge's office demanding explanations about why her daughter is being locked into a working space with Thomas for days, and Ridge tells her she is overreacting, reminding her that Thomas has spent years in therapy, rebuilding his psyche, and that the company needs them united, not separated, but Brooke doesn't trust it, remembering every time Thomas hurt Hope, remembering the mannequin obsession, remembering the lies, the romantic pressure, the emotional destruction, and she vows to intervene if she must, even if it means storming into the work session and pulling Hope out by force. Inside the private studio, Hope and Thomas sit shoulder to shoulder, sketching in silence, feeling the weight of hours pressing upon them like gravity, and when Thomas comments gently that he missed working closely with her, Hope blushes, trying to hide it, insisting their partnership is only professional, but her heart is beating far too fast and Thomas notices, smiling to himself as he remembers every moment they shared, every kiss she gave him willingly after her divorce, every night she came to him, every time she whispered that she felt seen by him, opening wounds that never truly healed. And Hope becomes flooded with guilt remembering how Liam collapsed when he discovered she slept with Thomas, and she wonders whether she ever truly loved Liam the way she thought she did. Outside the studio door, whispers begin to form around the building. Zend Forrester smirks to RJ that Thomas continues to get all the glory, while RJ defends Hope fiercely, warning Zen not to speak about his sister that way as he reveals he is worried that being alone with Thomas will break Hope again, especially now that she is still vulnerable from everything her mother, Liam, and the world expect her to be. By noon the air gets warm, thick, heavy with unspoken words as Thomas suddenly closes the window blinds, explaining sunlight is washing out the monitor, but Hope reads it as a symbolic sign of the walls closing tighter around them, and in that dimmed atmosphere she becomes hyper-aware of every sound, his breathing, his pencil strokes, his quiet voice whispering creative notes, and she grows nervous because the truth is she isn't afraid of Thomas hurting her. She is afraid of wanting him again. Panic rises in Hope's chest as flashbacks creep in. Memories of their night together in Rome when she thought the world changed forever. Memories of kissing him at the Colosseum under glowing city lights. Memories of whispering his name. Of letting go of every rule she lived by, surrendering to passion. And she wonders if this trap is fate pulling her back towards something she isn't supposed to escape. In the outside hallway security cameras show Liam entering the building unannounced. Rage boiling through his veins as he demands to know where Hope is, refusing receptionist instructions to stay away, claiming he will not let another scandal ruin his life or his daughter's stability, and he marches toward the locked design space, pounding on the door so violently Hope jumps in shock and Thomas stands up in protective stance, and Liam begins screaming about manipulation, calling Thomas dangerous, demanding Hope walk out with him immediately, but Hope freezes because stepping into that hallway means destroying her professional credibility and proving Liam right, that she is weak around Thomas, and she can't accept that, so she tells Liam firmly through the door that she is fine and busy, and she needs space to work, shocking the entire corridor of employees, because Hope rarely speaks to Liam with such distance, and Liam storms off cursing Ridge, Forrester Creations, and Hope for betraying him again, and the moment he leaves, Hope's breath trembles, hands shaking, eyes burning with tears she fights not to show. Thomas watches her carefully and whispers that she doesn't deserve to feel guilty for choosing her own future. And hearing him defend her like that sends emotional heat across her skin, making the room feel smaller, closer, more intimate. Hope drives home that night in shaking silence, gripping the steering wheel like it's the final piece keeping her reality intact, because as she moves through the glittering Ella streets, lights streaking through raindrops on her window, she can still feel Thomas's hand in hers, she can still taste the silence they shared. And worst of all, she can still feel that electricity in her veins convincing her she never stopped wanting him. And the worst part is that she knows tomorrow she has to return to that same studio room alone with him for 5 more days, and the ache in her stomach becomes unbearable as she pulls into her driveway, seeing Liam waiting on the porch like a ghost, soaked in rain, staring at her car with heartbreak and rage all over his face, and Hope steps out slowly, terrified of what argument awaits because she knows Liam thinks she betrayed him simply by being locked with Thomas, and she tries to walk past him, but Liam blocks her path, demanding emotional reassurance that doesn't exist inside her anymore, and Hope whispers through trembling breath that she is exhausted, she needs silence, she needs sleep, she cannot talk right now, but Liam cannot accept that answer, telling her that if she still loved him she would have run out of that building the moment she heard Thomas's voice. And Hope feels something inside her snap, because after years of carrying guilt and shame and emotional responsibility for Liam's fragile heart, she is suddenly tired of apologizing for surviving, tired of shrinking, tired of pretending she is not her own person, and she turns away from him, whispering that he does not own her anymore. And when she closes the door behind her, Liam collapses on the porch bench feeling the weight of losing Hope crash through him like a falling building. Because deep in his heart he knows something changed in that locked studio, and this time he may not get her back. Meanwhile, across town, Thomas stands in the dim Forrester Creations office long after everyone else has gone home, staring at the sketches Hope left behind, tracing her pencil strokes with his fingertips as though touching them connects him to her soul, and though he promised to be disciplined, his heart feels like wildfire, because he saw truth in Hope's eyes when she reached for his hand, and he now believes she still loves him even if she cannot admit it, a belief that terrifies him because he swore he would never return to obsessive behavior. Yet, now he sits at his desk whispering her name into the empty room, wondering if fate is rewriting their story whether he wants it or not. On the other side of the building, Steffi watches Thomas through a glass window quietly, chest tight with concern, because though she fought for years to prove Thomas had changed, she now sees unmistakable signs of emotional trouble resurfacing. Signs she hoped she would never see again, and she dials Finn for comfort, telling him she feels a storm coming, one that could destroy their family if she doesn't intervene. But Finn is exhausted after a 14-hour shift at the hospital, and tells Steffi she worries too much, reminding her that Hope is a grown woman and Thomas has earned trust. But Steffi hangs up feeling unheard, knowing Liam will not stop causing chaos and Brooke will not stop breathing fire. And in the center of all that tension sits Hope and Thomas locked emotionally together like magnets unable to separate. At the Logan home, Brooke stares at a framed picture of Hope from years ago, the old innocent version of her daughter smiling without pain. And tears rise in Brooke's throat because she fears that tomorrow Hope will fall deeper under Thomas's emotional influence. And Brooke recalls every nightmare Thomas once caused. Hope wearing the engagement ring she didn't want, the mannequin, the obsession, the lies, and she makes a fierce decision. Tomorrow morning she will show up at Forrester Creations herself and demand Ridge break up the project, even if it gets her banned from the building. At the Spencer mansion, Bill pours himself bourbon at midnight staring at the fireplace flames roaring like his own fury, because Liam called him earlier shouting that Thomas locked Hope in a room intentionally and Bill wants revenge. He wants war. He wants Thomas's career destroyed for getting anywhere near Hope again, and he vows that if Thomas steps out of line, he will take the Forrester family down brick by brick until there is nothing left but ashes. Meanwhile, Thomas drives home with the window cracked enough for cold air to slice against his skin, using the sensation to ground himself, because he is terrified of slipping back into obsession, and he repeats to himself that he cannot lose control, he cannot imagine futures with Hope, he cannot let fantasy take over reality, but deep within his chest the truth whispers loud. He is already fantasizing, already imagining the next morning where Hope walks into the room and looks at him with those wide, vulnerable eyes, already dreaming she will call him by his full name the way she only does when she feels emotionally exposed. And by the time he steps into his kitchen, his hands shake because wanting Hope again feels inevitable and unstoppable, and he does not know how to prevent disaster if she begins wanting him back. As midnight passes, Hope lies awake in bed staring at the ceiling listening to the clock tick through the silence, reliving every second of the trapped afternoon, the flickering emergency lights turning the room golden around Thomas's face, his voice whispering calm promises, the way her hand fit into his like it belonged there, and she begins crying, not because she regrets touching him, but because she realizes she didn't want to let go, and this realization cuts through her like a blade, because it means every warning from Liam, Brooke, and the world might be true. She is falling for Thomas again, and this time she may not want to stop. In Liam's empty hotel room, he throws a glass across the wall and screams that he won't lose Hope to Thomas, not again, never again, and he sends messages to Wyatt demanding they take legal action, demanding Douglas be removed from Hope's custody, demanding chaos simply to feel control over something. And while Wyatt begs him to slow down, Liam's ego and heartbreak drown logic, pushing him closer to doing something irrational tomorrow morning. At Forrester Creations the next day, Ridge wakes up before dawn, sipping black coffee while staring at the city skyline, filled with pride for the line Hope and Thomas are creating, believing the future of the company rests on them. And he has no idea an emotional bomb is about to explode beneath his empire, because today begins the second stage of Hope and Thomas's isolation work process, and he fully intends to lock them into the studio again, unaware of how much that decision will change every life connected to the Forresters and Logans. Hope drives to the office early, hoping to arrive before Thomas so she can breathe without feeling stared at. Yet as she steps into the empty studio room, she whispers into the silence that she is afraid of herself, afraid of wanting him too deeply, yet afraid of denying it too, and she stands frozen, touching the design board thinking about the life she always dreamed of, marriage stability, family peace, but realizing that dream died long ago, maybe with the last pieces of trust between her and Liam, and she wonders if she has been clinging to a version of love that never truly existed. The door opens quietly and Thomas walks in holding coffee for them both, soft smile melting into shocked awe when he sees Hope already there. And the air thickens as he hands her the cup and their fingers brush again. Only this time neither pulls away immediately, and the contact lingers just a fraction too long, meaning everything and nothing all at once, and Hope catches her breath because she knows she shouldn't stare into his eyes, but her gaze locks onto his anyway. Hope walks into Forrester Creations the next morning with her pulse thundering in her ears, heels clicking across the marble floor like drum beats marking the beginning of a new emotional war. And though she feels strong enough to face Thomas again, Something inside her trembles with anticipation because she knows today could be the turning point. The day she either falls completely into Thomas's arms or fights her feelings until she breaks, and as she pushes the elevator button she sees her reflection in the silver metal doors, hair perfectly smoothed, blouse fitted just enough to show confidence without intention, yet makeup light enough to pretend she isn't trying too hard, and she whispers under her breath that she must behave professionally, must act steady, must control her body and heart even as everything inside her screams to run back toward the magnetic warmth she felt yesterday. But as the doors open and she steps out onto the design floor, the building falls silent. Every employee staring at her like she has walked into a courtroom awaiting judgment, because rumors have already exploded overnight that Hope and Thomas nearly kissed in the isolation room, that Liam attacked Ridge, that Brooke threatened to burn the company to the ground, and that Ridge and Steffi spent hours arguing about whether Thomas is stable enough for intense emotional proximity to Hope. And because gossip spreads like wildfire in this place, eyes follow Hope's every step, measuring every blink, every breath, every heartbeat, trying to read signs of romantic corruption or scandal, making Hope feel naked even while fully clothed. She tightens her jaw, lifts her chin, and walks toward the closed studio door knowing Thomas is behind it waiting. And as she turns the handle the world outside fades again because inside that room stands Thomas, not sketching, not moving, just staring at the spot where she will stand, as though he has been counting seconds until she arrives, and when the door closes behind her, silence blooms thick and vulnerable between them, his eyes dragging over her face with a gentle awe that makes Hope's stomach flip and twist because for a moment she sees the man he is now, soft, calm, controlled, trying so hard to be better, and she feels drawn to him because he is trying not to want her, and that restraint makes her want him more. She greets him with a quiet good morning and the way his voice replies, a smooth low whisper trying to hide how happy he is to see her, wraps around Hope like silk and settles deep in her spine, and they begin working side by side again, pencils moving, fabric rustling, chairs creaking, minds merging, and it feels easy, natural, intimate in a way that terrifies Hope, because work shouldn't feel like love, yet today it does, and every second she shares breath with Thomas she realizes that her heart might already belong to him. As the hours pass they lean over the same sketch page, giving notes, touching each other's hands accidentally, laughing lightly at small mistakes, and Hope feels something peaceful she hasn't felt in years, like Thomas is the one human being who sees her without expectation, who listens without interrupting, who doesn't shame her for wanting independence from Liam, and as she watches Thomas bite his lip while drawing, she swallows hard and looks away because her body responds to him in ways she can no longer deny, adrenaline warming her blood as his shoulder brushes hers and she feels alive. Outside the room, Brooke and Liam storm into Forrester Creations again, desperate, hearts breaking, terrified that Hope has already chosen Thomas over them without even realizing it, and Brooke corners Steffi near the conference table demanding to know where Ridge is, yelling that today Hope will be pulled out by force if necessary, because she refuses to let Thomas's dangerous pull ruin her daughter a second time, and Steffi argues that Thomas is not dangerous anymore, that Hope's feelings are not Thomas's fault even if she is falling for him, insisting Brooke should accept that Hope is an adult woman with choices she must make herself. But Brooke screams back that Thomas stole those choices years ago and she will not let history repeat, while Liam stands behind Brooke stone-faced and hollow, eyes darkened by nights without sleep, replaying every image of Hope leaning over Thomas's desk in his tortured imagination, losing himself in jealousy so deep he no longer knows who he is without Hope beside him. Meanwhile, Ridge enters the studio quietly, clipboard in hand, pretending to check progress so he can confirm with his own eyes whether yesterday's emotional spark was temporary or dangerously permanent. But when he sees Hope and Thomas laughing while adjusting seams on a new red gown, Ridge feels chilled because their energy is undeniable, organic, powerful, unstoppable, and he watches Hope absent-mindedly tuck Thomas's hair behind his ear when it falls forward, then freeze in horror at her own action, cheeks flushing, a gasp slipping out as Thomas whispers thank you with trembling lips, and Ridge's stomach twists because he realizes Brooke may have been right all along. Love and danger between Hope and Thomas are inseparable. Outside the studio, Steffi argues with Ridge about the fate of the company, warning that if Hope and Thomas fall into romance again, the press will destroy Forrester Creations, painting the business as irresponsible, unprofessional, built on scandal, and Ridge hates that truth but cannot deny it, torn between supporting his son's recovery journey and protecting the family empire. But before he can make any decision, Carter walks in with legal documents outlining potential liability if the Hope and Thomas collaboration is compromised romantically.